Okay.
Pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. The start of the meeting this evening, we're having a non-public session. Then we'll be back at 6:10 to discuss the police chief recruitment and then go into old and new business. Motion to go into non-public.
Sure. Motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3.
Second.
Which letter?
A, 2A.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Alright. So, Scott, did you have some information for us on some of the things that we discussed last week as far as the chief recruitment?
So I sent all of you some information, giving you examples of some of the potential, issues that are come up as we recruit. And, I put in Garrett Chamberlain's contract, when he was here as chief.
Yeah, which is actually, what we have is his, it's the separation contract is
Right.
what it is, yeah.
But the other document right behind that is one that another town has. And, that was 13 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're gonna be, somewhere in between a 2-pager and a 3-pager if we go that route at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to, get a feeling for what potential candidates might be asking for when they walk in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where they're coming from and what their expectations are, what they've seen if they've interviewed in other towns, and what other towns might be putting out there as either a contract or a financial offer. And that kind of leads into the bigger discussion. Under the old new business side of it is, if we're going to engage somebody like MRI to do, help us with the recruitment, and I think if you look at the email that I have in there, I think it's under tab 2 or 3. 2. Yeah.
2, yeah.
Yeah. So you can see Alan's comments on, there are active recruitments that they've just completed in other towns. There are some that are still ongoing. So they're being successful at finding candidates for these other towns through their process.
Okay.
And that's why I think using somebody that has done this repeatedly over and over again over many years is kind of a proven formula for us to be successful in attracting the right types of candidates. And hiring a consultant isn't always necessarily a good thing to do. It does cost some money to do that, but I think, you know, given the circumstances we're in, I think, putting our very best foot forward to getting, the right chief hired, making sure we hire a dynamic, individual that has the leadership skills and the enthusiasm and looks at this town as an opportunity, rather than some of the things that we tend to look at as being negatives. Somebody else needs to have a mindset that this is almost a clean sheet of paper in a lot of ways, unfortunately, you know, from a staffing perspective. And they're gonna have the ability to assemble their own team and instill their own processes and values into the department. And I think that's where hiring an outside firm and having them be able to help screen and find the right candidates for us and narrow that list down is probably money well spent.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we're gonna, if we go to that step, you know, based on, you know, our earlier discussions, if we go to this step, then I would definitely have no issue spending that money to do it. Because again, none of us are in law enforcement.
Yep.
You know, if I was hiring a chef, you know, I know all the questions to ask, know all the questions asked to trip them up. I have no idea, you know,
Yeah.
on that next piece. Plus, what I liked in reading this was that also they had the other pieces, you know, all the other pieces that the chief had already talked about in that punch list that he gave us, they're covered. You know, the psych eval, the polygraph, all those pieces can be contracted through this.
Yep.
So I think that's the pieces. So we're not calling this piece for this and this one over here, and this, we have one steady stream of work through a
The full
console.
procedure, yeah.
And I mean, they're probably got contracts that, you know, if we go and try to get a one-off of something, it's going to cost us one thing. But since they do this on a regular basis, they probably have a different pricing structure for what they have to do.
Mhm.
And the fact that they're already engaged with a handful of other communities doing the same thing,
Yeah.
that in itself is gonna yield some candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If the other town doesn't pick somebody up, but they're still a strong candidate,
Right.
it's potential for us.
Mhm.
So, so I would say, you know, my thing is table it for right now, with the potential that this is probably the way we should go.
I agree.
I like it being tabled for now and
Yeah.
revisit as it needs, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for getting the answers so
Yeah.
quickly from Alan. That was great. That, I mean, he just
Responded.
responded
right
so
away.
fast. I mean, yeah, we were here on Tuesday. He responded to you Wednesday the next day. So that was great. So
Did
thank you.
Have you talked at all with Tilton, what their experience was? or-
I haven't, but I've used MRI in the past for other issues. I know other towns that have used them successfully. In New Hampshire, they really are the go-to company. There are other similar companies out there. Bernie Lynch, who used to be the city manager in Lowell, Mass, has a similar firm out there where he does recruitments. He does New Hampshire as well as Mass, much like MRI does, so they're kind of direct competitors, but
Would it be worth our while if we decide, if or when we decide to get a
Another
couple
company.
prices and
I think going. I mean, me personally, I think this is the one that we would go through. But I mean, I'm only one. You know.
Yeah.
if we're gonna be spending between 7,500 and 9,000, is it a lot of work?
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, we should get like if if there is another firm out there, we should definitely get some, like, see what they're willing to offer, what
Well-
they could do for us too.
Yep, I can ask the same thing to Bernie.
We may not need it at the moment if it's
Right.
tabled, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't wanna ask Scott.
Yeah, so obviously no rush on it, but, you know. if you-
So my concern about tabling it for too long is, this is gonna, if we start this process, it is gonna be a 4 to 6 month process.
Right.
Mhm.
No, I know that, I just, I just know, when,
Like
like we said,
within 2 weeks.
yeah, within 2 weeks max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, no, I'm not saying like another month or so, I just think,
Yeah.
like you said, we can get, those non-publics I asked about, and then
Yeah.
that would answer our question of how quickly we need to react.
Okay.
Alright, and, we're on to old and new business, I'll kinda let you drive the ship, Scott.
Okay, so first one that I want you to look at is under tab 3 in your book, and this is something, and Sean, you probably already saw this because you're the ex officio on the planning board. So, in preparation for the fact that our ability to have remote meetings goes away, and this is a concern I think that's shared by the planning board, probably the Conservation Commission, and the ZBA as well to some extent. John Schamoffel came up with some guidelines that he feels the planning board would like to adopt, and they're looking at the same draft you are, so they haven't made a decision on this yet, on what the, what the process would be to have a in-person meeting for them. One of the things, Craig Smith happened to stop in to see me on another subject, and again, because he's an alternate on the planning board, he was talking about this document, and his only request was, and it seemed to make sense to me, is that whatever we adopt, that all meetings of all boards should be using the same protocols,
Mhm.
right, for consistency. So that when somebody comes into a meeting, it isn't, oh, this is the ZBA, these are the rules, this is planning, the rules are different, this is the Board of Selectmen, the rules are different, whatever it may be. And I think there is some merit to having some consistency in the way we handle public meetings, period, not specifically just planning board. So, I wanted you to take a look. I was trying to meet with Jen, but her and I have been so busy, we haven't actually had time to sit down and go through this document, because each of us has responsibilities that we would have to take on to implement what John has recommended here. So her and I hopefully are gonna find that time tomorrow. We kinda laughed that we've been trying to do this since last week, but we think we're gonna have time tomorrow to go through it and really understand what this means to us as far as implementing the planning board's wishes. And then I think it would be, taking Craig's input, is this something that the Board of Selectmen wants to look at as coming up with either this or some version of this that would apply to all public meetings that we have. And so we are consistent across the board, and a member of the public walking through the door knows what to expect when they attend a meeting. And we're getting to the point now where I think we're gonna start seeing more people wanna come out to meetings rather than doing it via Zoom, but and the governor's orders may start to dictate that, so depending on whether they are allowed to expire.
Mhm. And then if there's anything any concerns that you guys have that I can relay to the planning board when this isn't discussion.
4A is the only one. Everything else I have zero problem with.
Okay,
4A is my only issue.
so so you feel that should be optional?
It should be recommended, but you can't force it.
Yeah.
I think 1C as well.
Yeah, that's just a definition.
Oh,
That's a definition of what it is.
okay, so that's not.
He's rather precise.
That's not
Yeah.
not in the list of rules.
It is. That's
Where is it?
4A.
4A. On the second
Next page.
Oh, the next page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
issue with that as
And
well.
that's what I'm saying.
As-
I just, it's.
I mean, same
it's-
thing with C, really, because.
I mean, because it's one of those things you can't. I have no problem with I mean, technically they've actually said 3 feet, not 6 now. I don't know when the date is on that, on what he's got there, but I mean, with the mask, it's recommended. This isn't a private business. It can be recommended if they choose not to. And as far as where he said you won't ask, the chair will not ask the vaccination status for question, you can't. Legally, right now, you can't. Because again, we're not a private organization, so, you know,
And what do you think of the login sheets?
that's fine. That's contact tracing still done by a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we still do it.
Responsible.
We still do it at church, just in case. I mean, in case someone in the building comes down with it, you know, hey, all these people were in contact with this person last Tuesday at 7:00. A lot of places are still doing. You go into restaurants, you still, even if you're not wearing a mask, they just go, "Can you write your phone number down?" And they don't even, you know, just a name and a phone number in case something happens. But I think that should be recommended. And because I look at it as those people that are most worried about it are probably going to be wearing the masks. So I would say at that point, you know, you're protecting yourself. You stay the 6 feet away from that person. If they're the person who's going to be coming up to the table, you know, well, if they're breaking they're breaking the 6 foot, they would have to, you know, and that's maybe you can have that. That would be if as part of the meeting you are required to break the 6 foot or 3 foot distancing, at that point, the board could ask, you know, could mandate, you know, but to have someone sit in the gallery
Yeah.
and tell them, hey, to sit in that far back corner, you have to have a mask on. I don't think, you know,
Now,
because I mean, right now, like I said, you go
With
into
what
like
we-
Walmart right now, says on the door, if you're vaccinated, no mask required.
and
Market
even though
Basket's about
99% of people have masks on.
yeah. Market Basket's getting rid of theirs by the end of this month. No mask mandate in Market Basket, and they've been they've been pretty stringent about it. So
Now, should this be adopted, like, by the planning board unchanged, then, like, we're certainly not gonna mandate it across the board for all the other like, everybody else.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a good idea. I mean, the
Yeah.
planning board
But
won't
they-
meet in person now. That doesn't mean all boards have to meet through Zoom. and
But they have that ability, right, to require this for their meetings?
the chair can require, in all reality, the chair can require whatever they want for that meeting. They're the chair, and if the chair and a majority of the board say this is how, and they're not breaking an RSA, then that's what it would come down to. Is, I mean, if they're not breaking the RSA and the board has voted X, then, you know, because the whole deal is there is an alternate way to attend the meeting, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So if the planning board says this is what they want to do, and I'm fine with that. If that's, I'm just saying, me personally, I that's the only piece I wouldn't do.
Well, no, yeah, so
but
there's,
what I'm
this
saying is
feeling
it's-
from them.
Right, just from
that
them, and
the
I will.
that the select board try to assert, that's why they've been trying to draw that line between the two different boards, cause they're elected officials as well. Like that, we don't necessarily govern what they do or what they can require, so I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Again,
and so
if that is
have
how
that
they want to
response.
run their meeting and they're not breaking an RSA,
Mhm.
then they can, yeah.
So then
they
what
can
is
do
the
that.
point of us reviewing this?
So we know. It's
Just so we
information.
know, we
Yeah.
don't-
That, and like,
Any-
and like Scott said, that, you know, are we gonna mandate this for all boards or for all meetings? Cause we can say all meetings have to be handled this way,
Mhm.
you know, because, you know, we technically oversee the town office, literally the facility itself. So if they choose to adopt this unchanged, I would not be in favor of saying that the town office as a whole has to operate under these specific.
And that's not what this is about anyways.
Right, but,
so-
right,
Yeah.
but I would say, it's, again, as long as they can,
So we
as
have
long as they can have an
these-
alternate meeting participation through Zoom, which we're not getting rid of, I don't see us ever getting rid of it from now on. In fact, we're going to try to better the process.
Yeah,
But that would be my recommendation. Mine is that 4A should not be a mandate. So
Yeah.
it should be masks are highly recommended.
mhm,
Simple, and say, masks are highly recommended simply based on the size of the boardroom itself. You know?
Yeah.
Plain and simple, you know, and it can be that, you know. So, but I think mandating someone, at this point in the process, I don't think that's the right thing to do.
yeah,
So that's my
I
take
would,
on it.
I would go further and say all of four, but knowing I have no authority to dictate it.
Well, like I said,
just
well, I
for
mean,
the
like,
record, I would say all of four.
well, like I said, completion of a login sheet, you should, I mean, the attendees really, you're gonna, not a lot of people go and hang out at a planning board meeting just for fun.
mhm,
Ellen might.
Yeah,
And, you know, when you get into hearings, which a lot of
Mhm.
what their business is driven by are hearings, for both the ZBA, sometimes us, planning board, you have to take an attendance list anyway,
And then,
so,
Yeah.
that's not
and
necessarily.
I'm
a-
not like trying
Yeah.
to make it.
no,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge, what I'm saying, it's not a huge
Yeah.
burden, I don't think, to do that, and it, you know, it can be done.
yeah, and like I said,
then,
it's something as simple as when they walk in the door, the chairman or somebody says, please sign in.
Right.
Can you please sign in?
Do we have these materials on hand in the event they, on,
So we do.
2B?
So
In the
to
event
be-
they
yeah,
demand
so,
them?
so we have masks.
Are
we've
they
got-
multi-layer?
Yeah, it's the
Multi-layer?
blue ones.
It's the blue ones.
So there's a white paper layer and a blue paper layer, so
Yeah.
it's two ply.
Let's put it this way, we're gonna use what we have.
Yeah, yeah.
If we go with this, in my mind. We have plenty of sanitizer, we have disinfecting wipes around, so, you know, none of that is, gonna be a problem.
Interesting.
alright, thank you. Do you wanna,
Right, so next on the list, I mean, we already discussed the EMD position. What I'd like is, you know, your support to have me continue driving the EOP update in the absence of getting somebody on board to do it. I don't want that to get slowed down in any way.
Yeah, I would say if you're comfortable with it, maybe reach out to Jim Hicks
Yeah,
and see, and again, if it goes unfilled for X and he's
yeah,
eligible to get a quarter stipend,
mhm,
you know, pay him a
Yeah.
quarter's worth of stipend, but see if Jim Hicks would be willing to help out in the interim as
Okay.
well, because it can't hurt to have a second person helping you with it.
and he's
I mean,
familiar with it,
yeah,
Yeah.
he is familiar with it, so.
and like I said, and with the stipulation that if it's over a quarter, then pay him the stipend for it.
now, I did speak with him last week, so he's not gonna be available like through the end of next week, cause
Yep.
he's with, family and such, but,
Yep. Well, I
and
can,
he wouldn't want any official, cause he has responsibilities to the hospital,
Yeah.
so he did make that statement.
Yeah,
'cause
no,
we were
I just
sorta
say-
talking about
yeah.
things and,
No, but I just don't, I wouldn't wanna
And the deputy
burden someone with
position,
that, I wouldn't
yeah.
wanna put that on someone's shoulder and go, hey, you did it last time, can you do it for us and for free?
mhm,
You know,
Yeah.
it's a budgeted piece and it's a big piece of it in this cycle, so.
yeah,
all right, well, I'm gonna keep trying to drive it forward, and
Yeah.
I'll work with Lisa Murphy and Liz Gilboy.
But to make it official on Zoom is our EMD, our emergency management director resigned this week, so we will be looking to fill the position of emergency management director as well as continue to try to fill the position of deputy.
Yes.
So that will be in the minutes.
Yeah, and please do continue to drive it forward.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Town office security system, we've had an interesting stretch of days here with the system. And had them back in here this morning, making some tweaks. And, I'd like to go ahead with the upgrade to the software, because I think some of our problems might be, because we're a few versions back. So that's $850, but I think it's gonna be well spent. The other part of that is we can control it remotely, where we can't do that now with our current version. So that means, you know, with the smartphone, PC at home, whatever, we can you know, manage the system remotely. So I think that'd be helpful for all of us, quite frankly.
Motion to spend $850 for the upgrade in software for the security system.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't fully aware of what this software.
So, well, it gives us the remote access. It also, one of the other things that we're having problems with the current software is it's limited as to the time schedules that you can create to automatically lock and unlock the doors. This will allow us to put in a second scenario for the doors, maybe even a third. Debbie has asked that at lunchtime, you know, that at 12:30 the doors lock, reopen at 1:30. We can't do that right now. We can do an open and a close once a day, but we don't have the ability to have a scenario in the middle. So that's one aspect of it, but really the thing that sold me on it was hopefully it's going to improve our reliability compared to what we're dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to manage it remotely, so that you know, either the chair, the police chief, myself, you know, we can be able to see what's going on in the building, and you can see the devices, you can see the doors, you can see the sensors, and you know what's working. You can tell whether the server is up or down. So it's you know, I think it's a good tool.
You can tell if Sean's sitting in the boardroom pushing the panic button for no good reason.
Yeah, well, then even over the weekend, it kept unlocking the front door.
Oh,
the main
really?
door, yeah.
No, it kept unlocking.
That's it, unlocking.
Yeah, unlocking.
Unlocking, and I got a call from the police department, and they said, hey, you know, just to let you know, we got, you know, a call for the alarm. So I went over, checked it out, and like, all right, I'll go check it out and see what's going on. And I couldn't really tell, but like, yeah, the door was unlocked again. So to try to get a hold of Scott, then I got a hold of Debbie first, and she had me go in and relock it from her computer. So in between then, I had spoken to Scott, and I left the town office. By the time he got here, just to kind of take a look at the system overall, it had unlocked again, and it kept doing it while he was here. And I ended up grabbing a deadbolt from Lowe's, and so that we could at least deadbolt the door.
Hmm.
Yeah, secure
And
the building.
that could have been some of our, because they've had random alarm calls like from the sensors, and it was probably just the pressure change in the building and making the door open on its own. That was probably the culprit for a while now,
Yeah.
and we
So-
weren't sure like what it was. So
Yeah.
definitely need to.
Yeah, so the other thing that I think was adding to the problem here is there have been so many tweaks to that system over the years that when he was here yesterday, he spent a lot of time on the server just cleaning up a lot of the old stuff and getting it out of there. But in the process, he deleted some things that maybe he shouldn't have, so we had to have him come back, and our fobs wouldn't work this morning on the outside doors.
Hmm.
So they
Yeah.
had to come back and
And
address
this
that.
software will,
Well, not so much
Clean.
address that, but it's just we're so many versions behind right now that at some point they're probably not even gonna support it, I'd imagine.
Well, that's the issue that we're potentially gonna run into.
Mm.
And, you know, the other thing that's happening with this is, and I had to check it Saturday when I was here, because one of the problems we have been running into recently is, for some reason, the server changes the time zones.
Hmm.
So your whole opening and closing schedule is off, because now they think you're, you know, mountain time or something instead of eastern time. Why it's doing that, you know, we think that's software related. Either that, my other thought is there's something wrong with the BIOS and the server, you know, that it's changes the date and time. And that's created some scenarios for us where we've had to go in and manually unlock or manually lock the doors through the console, through the dashboard on the system. But you can't do that remotely right now.
so you have to drive.
So,
Somebody has to drive here and do it.
right, and one of the things when Sean told me he had a problem, one of the first things I checked was, is the time right on the server? And it was, so that wasn't the problem that we were having at that point in time. But having the ability to see it and diagnose it remotely, I think would not only be advantageous to us, it would be advantageous to Monadnock Security to have that ability as well.
I'll second your motion. Sorry for
Oh,
that.
That's okay.
Do we even need a motion for him to do that, or?
That way
It's on the
it's on the
floor.
record.
Oh, okay. And then another piece of this, since there's a second, we'll discuss it a little bit further, was, you had brought up the overall security of the building, and just the fact that we haven't changed like lock sets or anything for a long time.
Right, so one of the issues that has come up, and we discovered it again today, is the keys that Jennifer has, and I'm not sure about Susan, but the key that Jennifer has, and I gave her that key under the impression that it only unlocked those two land use stores. She found out it also unlocks the outside door, so it's acting like a master key.
Hmm.
How many copies of that key have been dispersed, I don't know. My thought was, doing a lock set change on the outside doors. On the inside doors, I'd like to go to programmable ones on each of these offices. And, so everybody has their own individual code. One, you can track them. Two, if somebody leaves, you know, every March, you know, boards change, people leave, you can delete their code, add a new code, so they can have access to their office. It's a lot easier to manage that way. It's about $100 to $120 a lock set to do that, which is
But-
probably about the same as it costs to rekey what we have. And, you know, once it's done, it'll give us some flexibility. Mark said he certainly can install them, because they're pretty much a straight swap for what's here. So, that's one aspect. The other thing that we've kicked around before is, you know, putting the security cameras in this building.
Yeah, and I think that's something we'd have to discuss at budget time, but I do remember that was something you had to aim the cameras, different areas, things like that, but that was a bigger price tag, so it's something.
Well, that's 7,500 to 8,000 was the quote from last year. We'd have to give an updated quote.
Yeah.
Because COVID and a lot of other things have affected material prices. But, you know, that was, you know, Tim and I spent a lot of time with Monadnock going through this building inside and out to decide where we would have to place cameras to make the most sense.
Yeah.
So that proposal is there, we just have to be updated.
Okay, I'd be willing to look at that come budget time. The small dollar items, so amend my motion to include the price on the lock changes.
Do we know what that price is?
I don't. I'm gonna have to count up the number of doors, and I mean, it would come
But
out.
if it could fit in that budget,
Oh, it'll easily fit into the general buildings budget.
Okay.
Alright. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright, next on the list is exciting news. I don't know if you saw the
They haven't done
activity up on
that
the
yet.
roof.
Oh, they're already
The
starting.
material got delivered this morning,
Nice.
so what we thought was gonna be 2 to 3 month lead time, Tyler was able to, secure materials, and, so they came down and loaded materials, flagged off the roof, for safety
Beautiful.
reasons, and he's gonna get me a certificate of insurance hopefully by tomorrow, and, they're ready to go.
Awesome.
Wow,
Perfect.
So,
that's fantastic.
Right.
so, and Mark went around with him again, just to confirm which skylights, you know, were gonna be replaced, and he, you know, he sent me an email back today saying that he believes the number he gave us on replacing the roof decking is a really worst case scenario. He doesn't think it's gonna come anywhere near that cost, so, there's probably, you know, we can probably set our expectations a little lower than the high number, even though his high number was still a low number overall.
Awesome.
So, so the good news is that's getting done. The other thing that happened is they started laying the foundation blocks for the salt shed. As soon as that's done, Eagle Associates is gonna be ready to ship, you know, their materials here as well, so they can start to assemble and construct, the salt shed.
Excellent.
So, that's all moving forward. Was having a conversation with Carlene today regarding, credit cards in general, just the way she reconciles it. And originally Linda Langio, when she was here, we were trying to reduce the number of bank accounts, et cetera. And Carlene has found it a little cumbersome trying to, because we have 2 credit card processing companies, actually 3, I think, with Parks and Recs. So trying to reconcile all that out of the main account is a little bit tedious. So there was one account that we did not close when she closed some accounts a few months back. And what she'd like to do is just have all the credit card activity go into that account, so it's separate from all the other transactions. It's gonna be easier for her to reconcile. Out of that discussion came the discussion of, and we've talked about this before, is putting a credit card reader up at the transfer station to collect the fees up there. So I'm gonna be calling Interware, who does our clerkwork software, to see if that's something that they can accommodate. And we'll use, I think they use Heartland as their payment processing company. So everything would go through Heartland. People would just have to understand they're gonna pay, you know, that 2.97% fee to use their credit cards. Out of that discussion, Caroline said that Parks and Recs doesn't charge the 2.97% fee to people who use credit cards. We're absorbing that. And my question is, how was that decision made? I don't know if you
Yeah,
recall.
no, it is built into the fee structure,
Okay.
like where we settled on the registration fees,
Okay, so,
cause we were getting,
So,
So,
they basically increased the fees to cover the fee.
so that's,
which we had.
Right.
Cause what had started to happen was people would go online to register, so then they'd register, and then we'd have to start chasing people around for checks, and we're like, is it worth $1, like, to have to make 6 phone calls, 13 emails,
Right.
you know, like, and then just to get everybody into just using that automatic system, so that we weren't even touching money, it was just automatically coming in, so it was really priceless, you know.
So I'm gonna have to look into it a little more, because one of the things that Debbie and I were talking about today is she just got new card readers from Interware for her software there. And the way they're making them do it now is people have to insert their card to pay the fee, the credit card fee, and then they have to reinsert it a second time for their actual transaction. And she wasn't sure what drove that decision. We were kind of speculating, so until I research a little bit more, I don't wanna say too much about it. But it almost sounds like people wanted to see that fee separately, and wanted to understand that they were paying the fee rather than bundling it in, which kinda gets me back to the Parks and Recs is, you know, is it full disclosure, do they understand that part of that fee is the processing? In a store, we all pay processing fees,
Right.
and we don't realize it all the time,
Yeah.
right, every time we use a card at a gas station or anywhere else.
Well, I think, yeah.
But,
Yeah, because I think the way we did it, like, because I remember the conversation when we went to the system is, well, if we just increase it by this amount, it more than covers the fees, and the people are more than willing to pay like the extra $5 or $3 or whatever it was, and it took care of it. So basically, what it is they just made it like everything else. The fees for the program pay to run the entire,
Correct,
program.
yeah, like
Yeah.
that whole computer program is paid for through the people that use it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I just wanna make sure that we're, one, being consistent in how we charge.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do anything over here because, you know, those fees go to the state in a lot of
Right.
cases, so we have to separate the fee out.
Yeah, because that's like, yeah, when you go online, you get two charges come onto your bank
Right.
statement. Like $3.35 goes to
Yeah,
Interware or something, and then the rest goes to the town.
right.
And then out of that, she pays the state.
Mhm.
So, anyway, I'm gonna look into that a little bit more, I just wanna make sure that the way we're doing it is legitimate for a municipality, whether we can bundle it that way into one transaction fee and we absorb the rest, or whether we actually have to break it out.
Well, I guess, and I don't know if there's a disclosure or not on there about the fees, but
Well, and
I
that's
think it'd be
my-
just as simple as just
Yeah,
to throw
just
on
simple
there that
asterisk on the bottom,
included in your registration is this.
including your registration
Yeah,
is.
and if it's as simple as that, and we have to make a disclosure statement, that's fine, I just wanna make sure
No.
we're doing it right.
Cause I know
basically.
I definitely don't wanna make more work for our volunteers or lowly stipend
Right,
people
No, I
that are working
understand
their
that.
butts off.
No,
Yeah,
No, my only question about the credit card thing, so Carlene's she's comfortable with, if it's all coming into one account, is she comfortable then separating so she knows so that the revenue is,
so there are other questions there that her and I talked about today that I wanna get Joanne Smith, in on, to, you know, the way we recognize revenues, especially from, you know, like the detail funds, the other revolving funds.
cause that, I
'Cause I
think,
have some-
yeah,
some concerns because my concern is whether we have revenue coming in from different sources into some of these revolving fund scenarios, and then expenditures coming out of them. My concern is not in all cases are the expenditures showing up in the budget.
right. Cause my only worry is, like, I know at one point, before we went to the other system, I think for the rec department, everything was showing up in the town clerk's revenue. So when they would reconcile the computer statement or the printout, there was rec department stuff in there, and then they would have to figure out, well, what on that printout, what was rec, what was town clerk, and by going to the new system, it took care of that. I just don't want us taking a step back and having that same issue of not knowing whose revenue is whose revenue.
Yeah, so she's, Carlene believes that doing this is actually gonna make things simpler for her. And
Okay.
she did talk to Linda about it, and she talked to Joanne about it, and they agree that maybe going back to having just a credit card account is gonna make it easier to sort out and reconcile rather than having everything go basically into the general fund and then have to go through and strip all that stuff
or there's
out.
even certain elements of that, when you say it goes into the general fund, where like that, anything taken in, like through, like rec should never even touch that, but I don't understand how they
Right,
account
so-
for it, cause I know at one point, like Nicole had almost had it to the point where she had gotten approval to have like the rec accounts completely separate, and then they switched to like some type of escrow system where there's like a check that is written from Carlene to Roger to cover the expenses from the general fund. But that's shown to be, I'm glad we're talking about
Right.
this, has shown to be truly cumbersome, and a lot of the frustrations that Shauna and Josh and Heather are having right now it's all like it's like PTSD, like all over again. I'm like, I thought we straightened all of this out, but now it's right back to, and even worse, like I see something come through 6-8 weeks ago that we sign off on, the check was never sent for who knows what reason, and then there's a billion excuses given for it, or no comment whatsoever, and then we have to sign off on it again, and then it's still another 2 weeks before a check's released, and right now, that rec desk program's down, they had to go back to paper forms, because our internal system of paying things or prioritizing things isn't, I don't know, it's just not there, you know, and,
And I'm curious as to why that is myself.
so,
Because, you know, from my perspective, as soon as invoices come in, you know, I don't see them all from the mail. Sometimes they're stripped out of the mail before I see them because, but if I see them first, I get them, I open them, I scan them, right? So I scan invoices to each vendor account and then I give them to Roger. So I know as soon as they're here, within 24 hours, they're on his desk, should be on the next manifest to be paid.
yeah, no, and like I said, like that rec desk one,
Yeah.
we specifically signed off a month and a half ago and then had to like sign off on again last week
Yeah.
for some reason, and I don't, I'm not,
Mysteries like that happen around here for some reason, not the first instance.
yeah, but they're getting frustrated, cause it's good,
I
and then,
understand.
and it's the same frustrations that we had for a while until
Yeah.
we tried to, like Nicole was able to come in and work with Roger and Carlene and Linda probably, and express like what she's going through, and they started working a certain way to make it a little bit easier
Yeah.
and to have a definite process.
Yeah, I think this may be a situation where I need to get Joanne in here for half a day or something like that, and, you know, if Shauna can be available, you know, I'll try to coordinate it.
Cause the financial part's a big part, and even, like, it's almost getting to the point where, you know, you don't want them to question too much, like, why are we doing this, like, if it's gonna be such a struggle, like, to get something paid, like, we need this, the funds are there, but then someone's hampering it at some point in the system, and it's all paid for by the people that use the rec department's, programs.
Yep.
So it's not like it shouldn't be this difficult, you know, cause we've entrusted these people to do as the residents want, like in the programs, you know, through their attendance, they're showing support.
Yep.
And just to have all these troubles constantly is, you know, difficult, I understand it, but it shouldn't be as cumbersome as it is.
No, there are situations that are pleasantly disappointing.
Okay. Alright,
Experienced it myself.
yep,
So this credit card reader that they got, is that the same company installed that as did here, or?
so it's not, so what I'm speaking of isn't so much like a credit card
No, I
reader.
understand that, I'm
Like, so
taking
for
a
the rec
step back.
department, it's like the program, like the software, like people put all like their information in online, so it's not like they're swiping a card or anything, they're sitting at home with their card, but then there's 2 points to it. And I don't know if cause I remember Nicole speaking about Heartland and some other type of processing, and she worked with Carlene and
Yeah.
Linda, like, to figure out which one she had to be, cause there was only a couple, I think, that was compatible with the rec desk software. So that got squared away, but then we were able to also utilize another piece of the rec desk software where they could swipe their card, so she got like a little laptop
Oh,
thing.
so if they
So
do
you could use
sign
it
ups at
at-
a certain place.
Yeah, at the pool,
Mm-hmm.
down at the snack shack, like for soccer, we were able to run the credit cards like down at the park.
And they
through-
use it now at the
and
snack
that would
shack,
go, all
right?
goes through the rec desk, so what they're using today at the snack shack is actually something through baseball, like
That's
baseball
just
system.
the baseball system.
Yeah, that
I
baseball
see.
board, which
I see.
the town doesn't oversee
different.
the baseball people, so that was an agreement that Shauna and the baseball guys came up with, so.
No, cause the reason I was asking about the
Yeah.
credit card readers was because Scott mentioned And I've heard others say we need one up at the transfer station.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, people have forgotten what cash is. And
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I thought, didn't, I know Steve did some software work with the
Well, he
transfer
did.
He made a POS system.
Yeah.
Like, so he just punches it in and it records it.
Yeah.
So his receipts at the end of the day match up much easier. So it would just be, it would still do that, and then they would just punch in how much it owes and swipe the card. And
Is he, I mean, would he be a guy to implement something like that? Has he been approached if it's?
So
up his
he's the one that's kind
scope?
of, I think, driving the request
Mhm.
for a credit card reader up there.
yeah, and really implementation is just like Scott said. He's just gonna call the Interware or whatever and find out, okay, what do we need to get a machine up there and go from that piece. So it's not really no one really has to implement it. It's just getting one, finding out if how to do it, and again, I would say try to figure out if there's some way to do it so that they don't have to swipe their card twice every time, because it kind of takes the convenience out of it.
Well, and that's the problem that Debbie's running into with this, whatever this new system is,
Yeah.
is everybody's gonna swipe twice, once for the fee,
Yeah.
once for the cost of their transaction, and she's frustrated, and she's not happy with the readers, she's had them about 3 weeks, so she's gonna be sending those back and getting something different, but I don't think that's gonna take the 2 steps out of
Right.
the process.
There's got to be someone to call to get that taken care of, because that just seems silly.
So, but anyway, I'll work with her to figure out what we can do there, but right now, that's the way it is, and she's, like I said, she's had them 3 weeks and she's pretty frustrated. Just when you have a line of people and everyone has to swipe their card twice, that's a real pain in the neck.
And then I guess before any major changes or any type of changes in that system take place, if we could maybe hear from Carlene, just to
Yep.
understand a little bit better, cause I know it was a big win for us to have all the rec stuff separated, cause then it could finally be tracked separate from
Right,
everything else.
So I don't think that's gonna change.
Okay,
The account we put it into is gonna change, so the destination for the money, I don't, that's gonna be transparent to what Parks and Rec is doing.
cause it'd be nice that and like I had said, like Nicole had it to the point where we were gonna have our own bank account that all the money was gonna go in, and then something happened with Roger where he didn't really like that so much, cause I was hoping that that new account would take over for whatever was there before, just because of the trouble that you get for getting accurate numbers, like in what the stuff is. So it's kind of, and I felt better that it was in escrow, and Carlene
Yeah.
was actually able to show me a broken out number instead of going through these confusing ledger sheets that didn't even make any sense. Like, it should be pretty easy, like you take this in, this is what you expended, this is what you have left. It's not that difficult, but it was like pulling teeth for the 2 or 3 years that
Yeah,
we had
yeah,
it up.
so that aspect of it, I don't think will change.
Mhm.
We're just talking about, from a back end, being able to do reconciliation,
Yeah,
that having 2 accounts at TD Bank to deal with it instead of having everything go into one TD Bank.
oh, so you're actually making another account.
Well, but the account is there, we never closed it, it's because we
Okay.
had like 5 or 6 extra accounts
Mhm.
that weren't being used, based on some of the consolidation that Linda Langille did when she was here, so Carlene kind of inherited that system, but then realized that we had these accounts we weren't using, and instead of having them just sit out there, close them out.
Yeah,
But she still has one that we're not actively using, but it's still sitting there, and that's the one she wants to have all the credit card.
to be
information
broken out from
right.
the other stuff, okay.
Right, so it's easier for her to say, okay, everything that's in this is credit cards. It's credit cards from there, it's credit cards from Parks and Rec, it's credit cards from building.
Instead of being mixed in with all the checks and cash.
Right,
Yeah, okay.
exactly, yeah,
Alright.
so from,
So it's another level of separation.
right,
Yeah.
so from the user standpoint on the outside, I don't think you're gonna see any difference in that.
Okay,
It's all back end.
alright.
So I'll
Yeah.
go back again. Is there anything that the select board is doing or not doing to prevent the transfer station from getting
I think it's
a
just,
credit card reader?
it's just understanding what's gonna be involved to make that happen, and obviously it has to talk to some software back here, and.
Is that what the program that Steve made, does it communicate back here, or do
It
they?
does not, it's kind of standalone, so right now what he does is he has it on a system up there, he brings his data in on a
I see.
thumb drive,
and it
he
can
gives
get
it to
uploaded?
Carleen, you know, then uploads it, and that's, it's better than what we were doing before,
Yeah.
right? So we have more accurate information, and,
So having a card reader might even eliminate that need, or?
No, he'd
Or not.
still.
no, because we're still gonna be taking cash and checks up there at
That's
some
true.
point,
Mhm.
but,
Yeah.
But at least you'd know what, again, in the reconciliation, you know, he would have on, like, probably he would have to add a button instead of just cash, check, charge.
right.
Yeah.
So then she would just be reconciling those three to whatever's on the thumb drive.
Right,
I was just looking back at my notes, Steve did request that back in the end of March. I also saw it, did we ever give the incentive bonus? I mean,
no, I'm still, that I'm taking care of this week.
oh, good.
Yeah.
And then this, was it also the stipend for Ron that was voted on that
Correct.
same
Yeah.
time? Good.
Alright, next on my list is, I sent a request up to the business manager at the SAU so we can get a payment schedule for next year. I did not hear back, as of yet, but, usually around this time of year, we have something from them, so we know what our payment's gonna be on July first.
Yeah, because I was about to say there.
It's a month
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, there.
So,
And the
So
other
I
ones
just-
I've seen were,
Yeah.
beginning of May.
Yeah.
So, so we'll see what we get for a response, but, you know, the sooner we know what that number's gonna be, I don't wanna get it and say, oh yeah, by the way, it's due in 7 days, and do you have a spare $700,000 or $800,000 sitting around you can send us?
Yeah.
So, so I'll let you know once we get that, I'll get it out to you, ASAP, so you can see what the schedule is for next year.
Thank you for being
Great.
on top of that.
And that's pretty much all I had for old business that I can remember anyway. I'll think of something after I get in the car.
Piece I had, again, just to put it out publicly, I'm not on any of the town social media sites or created town social media sites, but I did receive an email and I forwarded it, I received an email from a townsperson and I forwarded it to the other two selectmen so they can see. And the question was, why are we putting lines on the road and lights up? It ruins the aesthetic of the small town and something, I can't remember what the other piece of it was. But basically, the response is safety. The lines on the road are done as a safety measure. That was all, I mean, just for anybody who goes down Greenville Road, you know, if you're going around a corner and there's no lines on the road, you don't know that the road curves. So a reflective stripe down the middle of the road tells you the road does not continue straight, where blackness tells you nothing. It's also a safety concern if you're on a road and it's very clear that the guy coming at you is on the wrong side of the road. Very easy to see when there's a yellow line down the road. The lights in town, we only, in our plan, we only added a couple, and again, those were on, under recommendation of the DPW and the police department, for safety issues on sharp corners that had no lighting. And then the rest of the lighting that was done in town was swapping out the old lights for LED lights, which pay for themselves with, I think, 2.5 years. I think it was pretty close.
Even less than that.
Yeah. So in under 2.5 years, all those changes in lights pay for themselves by going to an LED light. So, it may seem that, something may not make sense, but, I'll let you know on going down Timber Top the past, since Saturday night, a lot of people are suddenly on the correct side of the road because there's a stripe there. Otherwise, it's very easy to drift away from the shoulder, and you come around a corner and somebody's on the wrong side of the road, doing 35 plus coming at you. So, and walking the road on Saturday or Sunday for the parade, you know, they looked great, and I had several people who are new in town who were actually very pleased to see that new striping had been done down their road. They went to bed Saturday night, woke up Sunday morning, and there were stripes down the road. So, as much as one group may dislike it, other groups like it. I know our last time it was done, we had several people in our older generation were very happy because it helps them at night while they're driving. It's much easier to see, and with so many cars now having the lane stabilization automatic on vehicles, it's also helpful to keep you on the road. So it reminds you when you're starting to drift a little bit, the car gives you a little bump back, hey, stay in your lane. So as much as some people may think it's kind of odd, it is a safety feature, and that was why it was done. So
Thank you. Did you respond to
I will
her?
respond. I just want to
Okay.
make, that's, I'll respond directly back to explaining that, but I want to make sure that it was public here, that that's why we did it, and that it was, like I said, it's a safety feature, so.
Is that usually broken out in the highway departments?
No, because it's just part of the, it's only in the, like, the road maintenance block grant type stuff, that's where that money comes from.
I remember that discussion, cause I came and I was like, to me, it's a waste of money when the EPA put out these regulations and the road paint is gone in 2 years. How much are we spending? Can we only do one line? And someone said, the state won't let you do one line. You have to do two.
Yeah.
And all of that, so.
But that's
I
why
hope that they've
but
somehow
that's why we
managed to
don't pay.
find paint that lasts longer. But
Well, it's the salt that just tears it up, and but that's the reason we don't do the side stripes. It's just the ones down the middle, So we don't
yeah,
do
I think
shoulder
that's what
striping.
somebody said. You would have to do the shoulders if you only do one.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Who makes these rules? Or you can do none.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah.
And yeah, at that time I said, let's do none. 'Cause I kind of agree with the aesthetic thing. It feels like you're in Nashville. I'm not in Nashville, I'm in Northwich, but I understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah,
We do
but I
have
mean,
some
like,
sharp turns and,
Or, I
we've
mean,
had
it's one of
some
those things
requests
you-
for people to add safety features to the roads.
well, it's one of those things. You're riding in a snowstorm. You can't tell where the shoulder is sometimes, but the plows have come through, and you can see that yellow stripe. So well, I know I
That's
may
what
be.
I said, John. I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying.
I may
but
be
also
straddling the
understand.
stripe, but I know I'm not going to go over the shoulder.
Yeah.
And I've driven in those, where you go down the road
Yeah.
and I'm coming up on that edge, and I know it's got a soft shoulder. I can see the yellow line, and I can tell there's no cars coming at me, so I'm just going to hug as close to that yellow line as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, safety-wise, I think it's a very good thing, especially, young drivers, inexperienced drivers, strangers to town, and our elderly. I think it's a good feature for them. No insult meant by any of that, but that's all I had for this evening.
Okay. Jason, do you have anything else?
I was wondering if the attorney was ever reached out to for his comment on the RC club request.
Not yet. Sorry about that.
Is that on our sheet too?
It is.
It is. It's on my sheet
Or
too.
have to put like a,
And then, what's happening with the energy audit and the fire department's heater? Is that still in the works, or
we haven't heard back yet from,
are we waiting on them now, or?
So, well, we've got information back from Doug Wade, I believe.
did we?
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever gotten that.
We haven't?
Well, I don't know, he may have sent it to you, we haven't received it
I
yet.
thought
So we could make our
everybody was
final, decision on getting that
He
heater
sent
in.
recommendations to the email, or maybe not.
I don't think,
'Cause
it
we
may
had- we
have,
had
it may have been one of
bronze.
those weeks where it got buried quickly, but I was just, I know we were waiting on just Doug's report and recommendations so that we could,
I think
make the call to get that heater in, cause, in case there's any delay, we can get that in before,
For
Yeah,
what
that's
they're-
what I'm saying, there's, it seems
October.
like there's delays here.
yeah, October, yeah.
Keeps going, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, whoa.
Cause that's stuff that's a nice easy vote, and get that taken care of.
Mhm.
the,
And all I had, I guess, left was our tracking sheet.
this one,
Yep.
Yeah.
yep,
So Alan, you had requested a copy of the tracking sheet.
I was more interested in how people access that and how people get access to the emails regarding that.
I'm not sure what you mean by the emails regarding it.
Well, you had said there's emails related to it when you explained it to the other two selectmen, and I'm curious about access to those emails or to that spreadsheet.
Well, the spreadsheet, if you would like a copy, Scott has
So
printed one
if
off for you.
That spreadsheet is permanent and not gonna change, or do I have to request one every day?
You would
This
have,
is the thing, you're not. you're
it, well,
giving me a
first of all,
copy.
once you see it, you would probably understand what it is, and then you may not even request one every day. But if there's any changes, it is a living document, it's a punch list of action items we
The living
have.
document is subject to change. My question is, how do the taxpayers or citizens get access to this, other than having to request it each time it may be changed?
They would have to request it every time.
Yeah, we hadn't really thought of it.
A public document has to be
It-
requested every time.
It's not a public document, it's a work.
public document if it's between three selectmen, it's a public document.
So if you will let me speak for a second, it is a punch list of the action items that are on the bottom of our minutes every week. So we keep it on one list so we don't have to continually go back through 4 months of minutes to look at. It's an action item list.
Regardless of what it represents, it is a public document that is shared amongst three selectmen. Therefore, it becomes an official public document accessible to anybody in this town.
If you would like a copy, you can request it anytime you would like.
That's what I'm asking. So public documents have to be requested every single time. We don't know if you're changing right now.
If an action item is made, it would be
All right.
as items are brought up and we have something that needs to be looked at and worked on, it goes on a single list. It'd just be like, where Selectman Lage used to sit here and put his notes into his computer and then every week ask, how are we working on this? How are we working on this? How's this going? Instead of each of us sitting here and trying to go through pads and pads of paper, it's on a single list. That's what it is.
Alright.
So the items that are on the list are things that are spoken about right here in a public meeting.
Okay.
So it's the same items that are on the bottom of the agenda or in the minutes of the meetings, which are
Which we have to
accessible.
keep it, but that's a
Oh.
different issue.
Hey,
That,
Speaking of minutes of the meeting, did you keep minutes of the non-public that you had today?
Scott
You
has,
did,
yeah.
because who kept minutes of the meeting, all the non-publics that you weren't keeping minutes, and how do you plan on replacing those? If there's no video to take them from?
Well,
And I noticed when you ended your you didn't say anything about decisions being made, or whether or not they were sealed, or, you didn't close the non-public.
Yes, we did.
we did.
You close it in private? Because it certainly wasn't after you contacted the video people and said we're open again.
So I felt like we closed the meeting and then we opened the meeting, so we closed
You
it
you closed
in
the
non-public.
meeting, and then the next thing you're supposed to do in a public meeting is let me know if there have been decisions, or if it's a sealed and so on and so forth. You failed to do that.
I didn't realize, so
Okay.
it was sealed.
Ellen, are you happy with, having access to that spreadsheet the way that it's,
I'm
Been
concerned
presented.
with having access to a lot of things in this town that I've requested.
I'm talking about the
And
spreadsheet,
I have a copy of a spreadsheet.
which
And
is,
when it was explained, it said that we have a spreadsheet that's tracking the different things that you're doing.
Mhm.
and that they also somehow you could tab and hit where you could get emails to that, I'm thinking.
No, what I said was,
Excuse me, I'm talking now.
Mhm.
You said that, you would be able to access that among yourselves, and my interest was, how does anybody in the public know what's going on? For example, building a salt shed that was defeated last year, and since there's no minutes of any meetings or anything, I'm curious how that all came about.
how was, what salt shed was defeated last year?
The salt shed's been voted down a number of years. Now, that's a capital improvement, like right now, you're talking about hiring somebody to find a police chief, how much is that gonna cost approximately?
$7,500
And
approximately.
so is that going out to bid, or is that something that's just exempt because it's for you guys?
No, we also said that we would be looking at getting another quote from another,
So that's going out for bid. See,
Well, yeah, we're gonna ask for, you know,
and as far as a
Quote.
salt
I
shed,
have
this,
the answer to your question, Jason, I have the spreadsheet that I asked for.
yeah,
Does it-
and as
but
far as
is
the salt shed was paid for by unanticipated funds given to us by the state.
I didn't
Does-
ask how this stuff. how
Well,
it's
you
all-
said how was it being taken care of since it was defeated? It wasn't on the ballot last year, even though you said it just was.
No,
It
I
wasn't.
didn't say it was on the ballot last year, I said the salt shed had been defeated a number of times. So a lot of things have been defeated in this town a number of times, and they mysteriously start to happen the next year or the year after, whether the public wants it or not. Lines in the road is a perfect example. There's been discussions in this room from a lot of people providing input that they don't want lines in the road because of this lines in the road, because of the aesthetic thing. And all of a sudden, we don't have a discussion in the town about having lines, we just have lines. And then say it's safety. We added more lights because of safety, yet we have talked about eliminating all the lights and taking those street lights that we have and charging the people whose houses they sit in front of. But see, things just happen without any taxpayer input, and without minutes and without going through the process, they have no idea what's going on.
well, to me, lighting, you know, the road, why would we charge each house that the streetlights are in front of? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't benefit the house, yeah.
Well, we have, like on River Road, there's a light out there that supports one person's house or two people's house. And the question is, when we're paying this many $1,000s a year for street lighting, do we need that street lighting? It's not other than just sitting in the middle of somebody's street. It's not on a dangerous intersection or anything. So the debate was, eliminate all the street lighting, and the street lighting, if you wanna keep it, then you can pay for it. And now we're adding more streetlights for safety. Everything is safety related.
Yeah, cause it was at sharp corners and,
Okay,
yeah.
everything
Yeah,
is
and
safety.
There is a debate to be
Safety.
had.
Well, all the discussions are like taking place all through the year at all of our meetings, like it's not, like the streetlight stuff was all done during the board meetings, and there's video recordings of all of it. You know,
Well,
anybody's like willing to come and
So you
participate in
haven't had
meetings.
minutes of those board meeting discussions.
The lighting meeting, the lights, the decision on any lights happened over a year ago. Well over a year ago.
One thing I found out a while back is you can sponsor a warrant. You can do a petition warrant to say, no more lines on the road.
I've put in a number of warrants.
Yeah, so I'm saying if,
That doesn't mean the
that's-
selectmen necessarily follow them, but if they pass.
Well, if it's passed, then
know.
aren't we
we're bound
required
to
to
unless it
follow it?
violates a law, as far as I can see.
You would think.
Well, I just look at, we're talking about streetlights for something that, our streetlight list and everything that came off of was done by Woody, and he hasn't lived in this town for over 2 years. So,
even, yeah.
So.
And we didn't really touch on the email so much, but I think there was probably 2 emails in regards to that worksheet, and it was just the initial draft of it, and then a link, to it, and that was it.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
there's correspondences about the items.
But if the cleaning contract finally goes through, Scott may send an email and say, hey, the cleaning contract went through, and John may for the next meeting, have it updated that this is done.
Yeah.
I think
Either
that's
way,
what it
thank
was
you for
more.
the spreadsheet.
What's that?
Thank you for the spreadsheet.
Oh,
You're welcome. And we're working on the minutes. Piles of them here now. We're working on the minutes, so we have the current couple weeks, you know, done, and working on the past one, so we're looking at getting all that caught up, so everything's current online. Alright. I didn't have anything else, for tonight.
The only thing I had as we were talking was the flowers for the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So what Mark and Peter are saying is that they feel it's probably not a good use of money because nobody's gonna be going down there watering them. They just have volunteers that would do that. And we don't have that right now, so their thought was that if we put money into flowers, that in a few weeks they're gonna be dead flowers that we paid for.
Mm-hmm.
So they did put the ones in the larger bins, which you see around town, and the reason for that is that holds moisture a lot longer than the small, narrow ones that we hang from the bridge.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we are on flowers on the bridge, unless somebody has another idea.
Well, those originated from people that, like, put them on there of their own volition, right?
Right, well, Mark himself used
Yeah.
to, him and Judy used to donate them and take care of them, and they've done their time, so to speak,
Okay.
and if somebody else doesn't wanna step up to care for them, then it doesn't seem to be good use of money to pay for them.
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
It's your decision.
I had a,
Because
one more.
I look at it as, again, this is, you know, 4-day work weeks, 10-hour holidays, but you don't pass the bridge long enough on a work day to dump a gallon of water in, huh? Okay, no, that's perfect. Again, just keep asking and keep telling me all the stuff that's too hard for you. Gallon of water, 2 gallons a day. You know, gallon on one side, gallon on another. 4-day work weeks, 10-hour holidays.
Point made. My question is kind of a procedural thing here
Mm-hmm.
in the few months that I've been. So we had the thing in the ABC building with
The business.
the business.
Yeah.
And now there's this that Scott brought up, the land clearing here. And do we take an aggressive role as a select board, as enforcers, and go out, like, to planning, things that to me seem like planning board or, this is what I'm wondering, like, for ABC building, for us to take these active roles, in my mind, it brings like a line from the Declaration of Independence where it says he sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat up our living. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's what we're doing, but to me there's always a line that we want to draw, that we don't want to be
So I think
in
we
people's-
have a role, like, where by RSA we have to, or we have the ability to make sure that someone else isn't underserved by someone else not respecting their rights as well. So if you have someone that's not following the rules, there's no problem with issuing a stop work order, or, you know, but those those lines are gray, right? Especially with how you have some people that struggle to get initial approval, because they'll come, we'll just use the planning board as like the perfect example, because we have a couple things going on currently where someone was hindered for 5 months in even like the initial stages of their project by consideration and thought, because they like brought everything to the board and wanted to get certain level of approvals initially. And then we have another person that has just plowed forward with something, and neither one's like against whatever rules there are.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's really interesting, especially when you have the one that's trying to preemptively ask for permission and have all the, like everything straightened out and like going through that slow, cumbersome process. And then the other person that saw that they could start their project, and as long as they were willing to, like, you know, they did everything by the rules and the guideline, like as far as like standards, but like they saw that at the end, like they just wouldn't be issued like a certificate of occupancy unless a certain thing was met, like criteria was met, which is still being hashed out currently.
Yeah, and that sounds like something that the planning board is handling.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
from
makes
what
it-
I understood from previous
It
discussions,
makes it
then,
difficult, like to, like which way,
yeah, it's
should
always a
be forced to
balancing
go.
act.
Yeah,
It's
'cause you-
always a balancing
cause like
act
you
that
said, you
gotta be
don't want
careful.
to send out your droves of, you know, like to
Yeah.
suppress.
And-
But then at the same time, you need some type of rule
Sure.
and order
Yep.
to things, and that's where we're at right now, so it's like,
But my question was relating just to the select board. Do we take an active role in initiating discussion on these things, or do we allow the board, the ZBA, the planning board, land use, do we allow them to be the ones who would alert?
In I've only had it happen a couple times. Normally we ask the board to address it first, the other boards to address it first. So the example I can bring up is, and this, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, some people bought a piece of property off a river road, but it's on the other side of the river. And they built a bridge to get to it.
I remember seeing that.
Okay. Well, they didn't go through all the processes. Bridge was there. So then there was this whole thing, and it went on, and like we had the planning board involved, and we got involved after some other issues. So, but it kept going to the planning board. But really, it came to the point of we didn't have. What do we do? Like go and blow up the bridge? I mean, but that's really what it. I mean, unfortunately, that's what it came down to. Is that, and the plan. I mean, we're talking hours upon hours of discussion and emails and money spent through lawyers and everything, because, like they said, well, a boat needs to be. It's a waterway, so you have to, you know. But what kind of boat are you talking about? A kayak? A rowboat, you know, a schooner, you know, it's all, you know, and so when the river's at a certain level, it can't stop the flow of debris. I mean, all these things, but it came down to the point of, yeah, we had all these, we kept the planning board, and then we would get letters or ask the planning board, hey, can you do this letter, and the planning board would write a letter, I mean, back and forth, and, you know, it really came down to the fact of they built it, and then like mea culpa, you know, came back and then did all the things, but they built the bridge without, you know, and basically what happened is the bridge was built, they dropped it in. It was built off site, and they brought a crane in and they dropped it, but but it's that whole definition of, you know, where can you put a pylon, and where can you do this, and where do you know, but by the time we knew what was happening, the bridge had been dropped. It was there across the river. So it's one of those things. It's
so I don't
But it
think
really
we're-
didn't
we're-
make
we're
sense
not-
to
but I
me.
mean, and
we're
like
not
you
active
figure,
enforcers.
Right, it didn't
of
make
it,
sense to me
yeah.
how the ABC building thing was handled, like,
it looked from right now. It looks like the guy's not even going to open the business.
and because of the response he got from the town,
That he
which
had
made me like,
And I guess my whole question was, I mean, based on, and again, I think my opinion on that piece, on that particular piece, was I think we got a little overly aggressive based on what he said his business was and what we were requiring of him in order to open it. I think was a little.
And my question is not only, I think I voiced that this, come on, we're talking about 500 gallons of cooking oil, but whatever with that.
Right, it wasn't.
My point
It
is-
wasn't
is-
diesel oil. It wasn't. I mean, it was cooking oil.
But my point is do we assert ourselves into this? What kind of agreements were broken with the ABC building, whoever the owners are? I mean, are they? Is there? Some, it just felt wrong to me that we're.
Yeah, but I don't think this
Jump
board
in.
asserted that, like, we
But it
went off
came
of the
out of our office
recommendation,
because we
like,
got a
from
letter.
our- Yeah,
We got a letter from this business owner just saying, hey guys, I'm in town. And then from our office, it went to every department head.
As it
And-
should.
That's how it's supposed to be done. Well, then they reacted like, well, now we need to go inspect that building. And I'm like, whoa, what happened here?
So, I mean, in this particular situation, there are specific, because of the type of material that he was gonna be storing there, even 500 gallons, that the NFPA regulations require a certain type of fire suppression system. The other thing is, his neighboring tenants in that building also have a right to be protected. And it requires that building be constructed so that there is a firewall all the way up, not one that ends 6 inches above the drop ceiling.
But my question is, okay, that's not a public, I mean, it's not we don't own that building. So if this,
But we
If-
do own
if
the
the land-
responsibility for public safety as a town,
and how far do we take that then?
as far as the law tells us we have to take
I
it.
don't,
So if we let somebody go in,
but we're
and
not
it's
letting
up-
anyone, the landlord and the tenant make an agreement. We had nothing to do with anything until we inserted ourselves. That's what I'm saying.
but the
Is that-
laws, you know, you can't just let people do anything, especially in a commercial space. I mean, it's one thing if, you know, it's your own residential property, and even then there are regulations that you have to follow. Even if it's your own personal house, you have to construct it a certain way, it has to have certain things to be legal, to be occupied, to get a certificate of occupancy.
and I wouldn't say that we inserted ourselves. I don't feel like we inserted ourselves, like, it wasn't like we have people out looking around, like, seeing all the goings on.
That's kind of how it
Well,
felt.
I mean, I guess my question there was, I kind of looked at it as, I didn't understand why and again, speaking out of ignorance, but why, I don't understand why the zoning board had to get involved. It's a commercial building. So where he goes, is it licensed? He wasn't processing anything there. He was collecting and storing cooking oil, which,
But-
which needs to get over a certain temperature before it would even combust. So he wasn't doing anything there. It was just a place for storage. When the SAU office used to be there, I'd go in there and the SAU office would smell like diesel fumes because the people who own the building are running their trucks in the garage port in the back. So wait a minute, so you can run a diesel truck inside a building, but a guy couldn't store oil. So I didn't understand why the ZBA was involved. So
So it gets into a change of use. So when you get into change of use situations where a building is traditionally used for office space and now you're using it to store flammable material, that could trigger the need for the ZBA to get involved, to do a special exception, because it's a change of use than what is traditionally,
I guess.
well, that building. And the other part of it was, because you know, you go back to what was the original agreement when there was a site plan review by the planning board for that building, what were the conditions under which that building was approved? And that could have been the types of businesses that can occupy that space. And unfortunately, we don't have those details readily available here.
Yeah, and see my,
That's a
and,
problem.
yeah, and see my issue is
in this entire office.
you know, Prime Roofing was there, Prime Roofing was there. The tar that Prime Roofing has is more flammable than cooking oil.
Right, but each of those should have been addressed at the time they were allowed to occupy the building. That's really the point. And, you know, this is the problem that we have with everything is, if you have something that's going on in town, and you're gonna choose whether it's a local ordinance or an RSA, on one property owner, you decide to enforce, and on the other, you wanna take a different approach, you end up eroding
Mm-hmm.
your own ability to enforce your ordinances, cause they're not gonna stand up in court. When somebody goes into court and you say, yeah, we're trying to enforce these ordinances, yeah, well, you let 3 other people ignore them. So therefore, why are you picking on this person?
And
I mean, this is how you lose court cases when you go to enforce it. The other problem that we have here, quite honestly, is we don't have physical people to enforce. We have a very part-time building inspector and zoning enforcement officer. And when you don't have somebody, that's why it ends up falling to this office, right? That's why it comes here, is because there is no place else for people to turn. There is no other resource. The planning board has the same issue with subdivisions. It's like, they can have all subdivision regulations they want, but who's actually gonna go out and inspect and enforce and make sure that everything that's on a Mylar, all the conditions that are on a Mylar, actually happened? And we know that that hasn't happened on a regular basis around here, cause we can point to 10 and 20-year-old subdivisions around here where none of that was adhered to. And the planning board is made up of basically volunteers. And they don't necessarily have the time or even the expertise necessarily. So then we rely on a consulting engineer like Kent Brown to go out and do some of that stuff. Well, he's not gonna come out unless we ask him to come out, unless somebody, makes that happen. And, that's why all these things have fallen through the cracks over the years here. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the staffing, we don't have the funding to enforce a lot of things. It's even the new driveway regulations. It's like, okay, it's another set of regulations. Now, who's gonna do the enforcing? And I used to have people, when I was chairman of the Board of Health in Mass, people saying, oh, you need to pass this regulation or that regulation. I have to run and say, yeah, well, do you see any bodies here that can enforce it? Don't even bother putting it on paper. Unless it's a state law and you have no choice. Creating more local laws doesn't make any difference if you don't have the enforcement mechanism to go with it.
I
You're
agree.
wasting everybody's time.
yeah, or even the staffing to track it and
Right.
And like I said, and I mean, really, enforcement. What's the enforcement?
Right.
You
Right,
know?
well, that's the other thing is you put regulations on paper.
What's the penalty?
What's the penalty, and do you have the intestinal fortitude to actually go to court with somebody and enforce it?
Because I'll let you know, there's, and with that being said, I know there's at least 2 builders in town. They have no problem going and dropping $20,000 in front of a lawyer and go, hey, win this case, and we will lose. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Well,
My take from that is be careful about putting out regulations.
it is. But I look at it as,
Very true.
but my whole thing, like I said, I mean, my whole piece is like, for the biggest thing we have is if you start to do something and then you realize, oh, I needed a permit, and you go, it costs you twice as much.
Most times do
I
that.
mean,
Right. But what I'm saying is, but that's the only penalty that I know of. But if, like, for example, you go and you've started a new process and you've done everything and none of the inspections are done, and you're 3/4 of the way done with a foundation and basement and roughing and all that.
You talk about all these
You-
inspections.
no,
I wonder
I mean,
how
there's
they
no-
even- I wonder how houses stand even in Sharon. They have nothing.
But there's
As far as I know, they have
nothing written
nothing.
that says you will be forced to rip it out, or there'll be an
Well,
X $1,000.
Well, you can take somebody to.
Right. Willing to take them to
But like
court.
you said, you can't, right, you have to take them to court and you have to be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Now, when I was in Wilton, our building inspector, we had situations, we went to court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we enforce things, that's how we got things done. And you have to be able to go in, somebody pours a foundation, it's 2 feet too close to the lot line. You wanna catch that when it's a footing, not when it's a whole foundation, because if the whole foundation's up and half the house is framed, there isn't a judge in the world that's gonna make you
Right.
tear it down. And except in extraordinary circumstances, cause you're gonna say that the financial expenditure has been made to the point where, you really can't force the homeowner or the builder, contractor to rip it all up.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting
Well, that's why.
topic for
that-
sure.
Well, that's why having the manpower to do the regular inspections before things get out of hand and putting a stop
And
to
this
them
is-
before they get so far down the road that it's beyond the point of no return. That's what's
yeah.
required, and I'm not convinced that in a lot of cases we have that capability because we
Mm-hmm.
just don't have the people to do it.
Well, there's
And
some
that's-
aspect of that, like you were saying, like I don't have the appetite for adding more,
Yeah. And,
you know.
and sending hither swarms of officers.
Well, so part of it though, honestly.
But
and-
it is like a balancing act.
and-
There is a balancing act. I don't
Yeah.
discount that. Yeah.
Part of it is, some towns have, like in the case of the ABC building business, some towns make you pull a tenant fit-out permit. And that's, when you pull that permit, that's when you get the scrutiny and you get educated up front as to what you're gonna need to do before you expend a lot of money to try to move your business here. A lot of this is expectation setting, and we don't have a good process for any new business moving to town. We just don't. And if you're trying to do a structure or even a change of use, and you're not aware of it, we do things differently here in that the ZBA is at the front of the process to get a special exception for almost any type of business you want to put in town. That's very unusual. The ZBA is usually an appellate board. Right, you're appealing a denial from some other board, from the selectmen, from the building inspector, that's what ZBAs are for. We front-ended here, you need to get your variance, your special exception, et cetera, before you start. So you go to the ZBA first.
Well,
not as-
probably because everything's residential.
Well, that's
That's the
exactly.
thing, and it really
Yeah,
is.
there is
This
no-
is a family town. You got a
Well,
few
we don't have a
businesses.
commercial, we don't have no commercial
So it's
zoning.
not like you have a commercial or industrial zone, we have already listed out.
Yeah.
These are uses that are available to you by right, cause we put it in our zoning code that says if you're in this zoning district, these are the types of businesses and activities you can have in industrial. This is what we expect in commercial, and the rest is, rural residential. We don't have that here,
We just have rural residential,
basically.
and I think
Yeah.
that's a big reason why people like.
Well, they like it, but then we have businesses, like big businesses too.
We have
You
a
know.
few.
Yeah.
We haven't.
Oh, more than a handful.
Yeah.
Sprinkled in business centers, and we should, it's another thing that needs to be addressed and looked at.
Is one.
Having a commercial district or
Oh.
like having different zones, like even maybe where some of these businesses have been established, make it so that it's not an issue.
Except our big businesses are
forward.
established in the center of the village district, so.
Yeah, yeah,
Alright,
alright,
Yeah, that was all I have.
alright.
motion to adjourn?
So
I will
sec-
second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Too bad. It would have been almost 9 o'clock.
Why? Would have been. Was that a genuine smile? Okay.